understanding webinar roles. There are 3 roles in GOTO Webinar that we're going to be referring to. Now, first, you have the organizer. The organizer, they are the account holder. They are in charge of scheduling and managing that webinar, and they can always invite a panelist who you want to think of as a guest speaker and a content expert. And of course, we do have the attendees, who are your audience members. Now, let's talk about the roles, how they affect a live session. So back to the organizer. They are responsible for starting the pre-webinar. They also have to start the broadcast. They will be the default presenter, however they can pass that around, and they are going to be responsible for managing all the in-session features, and you can always invite a co-organizer to help you. Next, the panelists. So again, they are the guest speaker. They do have access to the chat box and they can chat with other staff members. They can share their webcam. Now, they cannot see the Q&A, nor can they launch polls, because you want to think of them as a content expert, where the organizer and the co-organizer are the ones managing the event. Then, of course, you have your attendees. They can join via the computer or the mobile app. They will always enter muted by default. They do have to register to join, and they can use that questions box to communicate and ask questions throughout the event. Once you log into your webinar account, you're going to notice there's a schedule button here, so you're going to want to click that. Then we're going to choose the standard option today, and we're going to fill out the web form. Title it. Here is where you can choose the occurrence. We're going to stick with the one-time occurrence, but notice you can do a reoccurring webinar, even a custom schedule. Then you're going to select the calendar, choose the date and the time. Time zone, even if people are joining all over the world, just make sure you keep it in your own time zone. When your attendee registers, it'll convert to theirs when they add it to their calendar. Once you click Schedule Now, it's going to take you to this section where we could fill out the web form. We've already done the title, the date, and the time, but if you need to edit anything, all you have to do is click in the box and it's going to give you the option to edit. Here's the description area. You can pop in an agenda, tell people why they might want to join your webinar, include that in the description. You can invite co-organizers and panelists right here from this section here. Now, to invite the organizer, you're going to click on the box. Then you're just going to enter in their name and email address. And to invite staff members, they do not have to have a GoToWebinar account, but they will need an email address to get invited. Once you click Update, they're going to get their unique invitation that includes all of their join information. And if you click the 3 dots next to their name, notice you can always copy their join link. You can resend the invitation from our system. You could even remove them as a staff member. You're going to add the panelists the same way, but you're going to do it from the panelist section here. Settings, they're going to pull over from the default audio settings that we did earlier. But if you want to edit anything, just go ahead and click on the box, and it's going to give you the audio options where you can add or take away from the already included defaults. I also want to point out auto record. If you see it green like this, that means it's turned on. And once an organizer starts the broadcast, it's going to automatically start recording the webinar. Scrolling down to the roles, I do always like to point out, depending on your role, each person does have a unique access code. They're different from each other depending on role. And the organizer and the panelists are always going to join that webinar unmuted, while the attendees will join in a muted state. So you don't want to share join information with anybody. Here you could include a welcome message, so when your attendees arrive, it's going to automatically see the message that you include here. You could list your presenter details and add their picture to the waiting room slide. The waiting room is what your attendees see when you've started the webinar, but no one is actively sharing their screen. Coming down to branding and colors, this is where you can customize the look and feel of your webinar. You could include a logo. You can add a custom image. Here you can choose a feature color. You can even click this plus option if you want to customize the background, title, and border even further. You could even include hex codes if you want this to match your company colors exactly. Then you can always preview what that registration page is going to look like. The next section that we see here is Share Event, and you are going to be responsible for pushing out the registration URL to your attendees. Next box is Registration. Here is where you can cap your registration limit. And if you want to get notified every time someone registers, you can turn those on. And the default is automatically approved. So that means once an attendee registers, they're going to automatically get the information on how to join the webinar. You can change it to manually, which will allow them to register, but they're not going to get the information until you come in here and approve them. Here is where you can add custom questions. Bare minimum, your attendees do need to give name and email in order to join and register. Here you can create other things like maybe you want to know their country or their role in the purchase process. If you mark the question with a star, that will be this will be a required question that they cannot leave blank. And notice, you can even include your own custom questions, short answer or multiple choice. And as I mentioned earlier, in real time as people register, it is going to start counting down here. Now let's take a look at the emails. Once an attendee does register, our system is going to send these automated emails. The reply to in those emails are going to be linked to the license holder, but maybe you want to change this to the marketing team or an alias. You can even change the email address that's going to be the reply to in the automated emails. The confirmation email, if you click on it, it's going to give you a preview. It does have join information, but you can add a custom text at the top and the bottom. If you don't want the emails to go out, just choose the none option here. Reminder emails. You can send up to 3 depending on how far out scheduled your webinar is, and you can have one go out hours, days, and weeks before. It does have the same pre-populated information on how to join, but you can add some custom text. Same thing, if you don't want it to go out, just choose none. Follow-up emails. These are going to go out one day after the scheduled end time, but notice you can have it go out sooner or later. The follow-up email just has some custom text that you can add in here, and you could include a certificate saying they've joined and completed the webinar. And if you recorded the webinar and your recording is saved in the content library, you can even include the recording to go out in the follow-up email. Just make sure you save your changes each time. And if you wanted to, you can even send a follow-up email to people who registered but did not attend. Very last thing is engaging your attendees. If you have the Pro and Plus plan, you are going to be able to upload up to 5 streaming videos that you can play in your webinar, only for Pro and Plus. Now, you are going to have to include those videos here in advance. Then, once you start that webinar, from the screen sharing tab is where you can launch it, MP4 or YouTube links. Next is handouts. This is a really great way to push information out to your attendees while they're in session. You can include up to 5, and we do have some file restrictions. I've seen people add, the PowerPoint and PDF with the notes stripped out. Maybe you've got some Word documents you want them to have access to. Any handouts that you include will be available to your attendees while they're in session from their control panel. They will have the option to download and save them. Next is polls. Polls is a great way to keep your audience engaged. And notice you have multiple choice, multiple answers, or one answer. Let's go ahead and create one together. And then you're going to preface the answer. So yes, no, let's include a maybe here. And then save your poll. I do recommend that you add your polls in advance. You do have the option to add them on the fly in session, and you can include up to 20. Last thing here is the survey. Here are your options for the survey. On a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think of the webinar, short answer, and multiple choice? Then, once you include the survey, let's do on a scale. Rate the webinar. Then you want to add it to the survey, and you could keep on adding additional questions if you want different questions to show. The default option is for that survey to pop directly after the webinar, so as soon as an attendee leaves or once the organizer ends, it's going to pop open in a separate browser to just your attendees. If you want, you could also include it in the follow-up email or one over the other, and you can even send it to your absentees. How to invite your staff, registration settings, and email automation. To invite co-organizers and panelists, you're going to go to the section right here, depending on which role it is. To invite organizers, you're going to click right into the box here. Then you're going to type their name and email. They do not have to have a GOTO WEBINAR license in order to be invited as a co-organizer or a panelist. Just do it by email address. Once you click Update, they're going to get their unique invitation that has their join information. And what's nice, you can click back on the tile, and next to their name, if you click the 3 dots here, you actually have access to their join link. You can resend the information from our system, and you can even remove them. To add the panelist, you're going to do it the same way, but just make sure you do it from the panelist section right here. Now we're going to scroll down to registration settings. Bare minimum, in order for someone to register, they do have to provide first name, last name, and email. Right here under registration form, this is where you can include additional fields. Maybe you want to know their phone number or their role in the purchase process. If you mark it with a star, they cannot leave that question blank. They have to fill it out, just like name and email. You even have the option to include your own custom question, either short answer or multiple choice. Just make sure you save your changes if you decide to do that. Also from the registration settings, notice you can cap your registration. Maybe you have the 100 attendee limit and you only want 100 attendees to register. Here you could turn on notifications, so every time someone does register, you get notified. And then here is where you can turn on the manually approved section. So it is on automatically, so that means as soon as an attendee registers, they're going to automatically be approved and get that join information. If you change it to manually approved, they can register, but they won't get the information until you come to this section here and approve them. And in real time, it is going to show you as the registers register, or the attendees register. Now we're going to scroll down to the email section. Once an attendee registers, our system will actually send out the reminder, confirmation, and any follow-up emails. In those emails, there is a reply to, which will be linked to the license holder. But maybe you want to change this to a colleague or a friend. You can change the name in the email of the reply to just by typing it into the box right here. And the confirmation email, this is what it looks like. It will have pre-populated information on how they join, but you can always add custom text to the top and the bottom, and you could even change the subject title. If you don't want the email to go out, just make sure you choose the none option here. Same thing with reminder emails. You can send up to 3 depending on how far out scheduled your webinar is. Days and hours before, you can send those out. And it will have the same information on how they join, but you can always pop in custom text. And again, if you want to turn them off, you can do none right there. Last email is the follow-up email. That's going to go out by default 1 day after the scheduled end time, but you can have that go out sooner or later if you would like. Erase this if you want to enter in your own words. And from the follow-up email, you can include an attendee certificate, basically saying they've completed and joined the webinar. You can even preview it, that's what I was just doing. And if you recorded it, you can include the recording to go out automatically in the follow-up email by clicking Add Video. Just make sure you save your changes.